This right here is a Chipotle chicken burrito with beans, rice, a few salsas, and sour cream. And this is the same burrito made completely from scratch with a few key improvements. Here's how I turn Chipotle from fast food to slow. So it's the end of August, summer's coming to an end quickly, which is a big time of transition in the garden. Starting to make room for those fall crops, but there's still a copious amount of those summer staples like peppers, tomatoes, beans, and corn. So I thought for part 2 of this slow food to fast series, I would head to Chipotle, a chain restaurant that has exploded in popularity over the last decade, really by perfecting the concept and business of fast casual food. So Chipotle is not exactly your classic fast food establishment where most of the food is made in bigger factories, then shipped to the restaurants for just heating up and assembling. At Chipotle, as you can see right here in this day in the life video from Maxwell, he's a Chipotle cook, the food is actually being prepared from scratch, which means the food will taste fresher, but there's also going to be a level of inconsistency meal to meal. For my order, I went with the most popular item, the chicken burrito, and I chose the toppings that would have the most crossover with what's growing in the garden right now. They gave me all of these sides for free, possibly because I was filming. I will say that. They also loaded up, like this is a hefty,
big burrito.
But beautiful.
And I've definitely eaten Chipotle, and it's not this big.
And I know there's currently a lot of controversy over burrito sizes. For me, again, I was filming. I think they were like under pressure. I think this is a great deal. $9.60 for the burrito. That's a lot of food. Let's start with the chicken.
Yeah, let's start with the chicken.
Like, you know, what we're here for, right?
This is my go-to. When I order Chipotle, I get chicken.
It's fine.
It's fine.
That's my
Some kind of
initial.
spice mix, not too salty.
It's not that layered with flavor. I thought it would have more complexity.
It's got like peppery flavor.
Yeah, peppery flavor all the way through. Let's move on to this. This looks really good. All the salsas look good.
Yeah.
Like these look very appetizing. Ooh. That's got some kick.
Spicy.
Yeah, that's good.
It kind of reminds me of like Taco Bell hot sauce in the packet.
But like a fresher.
But like a fresher version. Like it's very like basic red salsa flavor wise.
But like spicy salsa. That is spicy.
Yeah.
And that's the point of that. And it looks spicy.
But it doesn't have like that much depth of flavor. Like I feel like it's just red spicy.
Yeah.
And like maybe some cumin.
I agree with that. All right, let's move on to this. We got the salsa verde.
This I always order on mine.
That's good. That's spicy too. Not as spicy as this.
Very similar flavor though.
Yeah.
Really similar, that like red pepper and cumin.
It tastes like salsa verde from a jar from the supermarket, but a little better. Let's do the pico, which looks as basic.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks a little sad.
Not as bad as I thought. Not as bad as it looks, I would say.
Not as bad as it looks. I can taste the lime juice, a lot of salt, cilantro, onion, really basic.
Flavorful.
Better than I
Pretty
was
standard,
expecting.
And we got the corn.
This I also always order.
Yeah, this is your go-to.
Yeah.
Sweetness from the corn, definitely.
Salty.
Yeah, everything's salty.
Everything's salty.
It's fast food.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting. I've never really had them separate like that. And
they're
so
all salty.
they're all very salty.
Yeah. This is basically everything we just sampled, plus rice and beans, plus the tortilla.
Whoever made this burrito did a really good job.
When he was rolling it, I'm like, no way, that's the classic.
Yeah.
Like, no way they're going to fit that all in.
Yes.
And it just, once it goes in the tin foil, and it's like sushi. Like, they just mold it, and you're like, oh, look, that's big baby.
I think your Chipotle experience depends heavily on who's making your Chipotle.
Yeah. And I feel like they tried extra hard.
Because you were
I had
filming.
the iPhone. Good tip, just film them, and they're going to try like 10 times harder.
I love Chipotle.
That's really good. Not nearly as spicy when it's in there.
Or
the spice
salty.
is good. Or salty. Yeah, I think the beans and the rice and the lettuce and the sour cream, it balances it out nicely. I mean, you see why people love Chipotle and why it's done so well. Like, for the price point, it's just a lot of good food. And I think it's just, they're doing fast food, but it's slightly fresher, for sure, than a lot of standard fast food places.
This tastes very much like burrito. Like, you eat it all together, and it's like like burrito. It's not like I can taste the tomato
can't
and I
pick
can
out
taste the
anything.
beans. You cannot pick out a single
That's
ingredient.
also classic fast food.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be able to pick out anything.
And
It
it was-
should all, it's like a smoothie. It should all come together into one flavor.
And it was similar too with the McDonald's burger, where once you were eating it, it just becomes like this like singular flavor in your mouth.
And texturally too. We'll see the difference there. Because that is all one, just like McDonald's.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a lot of things to make. So here we go.
All right, so let's talk about Chipotle's chicken. Now, when you look up copycat recipes, most of them use this right here. This is Chipotle in adobo sauce, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with at this point. These are smoked jalapenos in a vinegar and tomato paste sauce. And for most Chipotle chicken copycat recipes that you see on the internet, they take a can of this, they add some onion and some garlic, a little bit of oregano and some spices, and they blend that up to give you a wet marinade for the chicken. So I am gonna be testing this classic copycat recipe, but from our taste test, it seems like the standard Chipotle chicken is not a marinade. It's actually a spice rub. So I had another plan for a spice rub using, of course, as many homegrown ingredients as possible, and then we'll see how it performs compared to the classic marinade. Now, I did a full short last year on what an actual Chipotle pepper is. Most of us are familiar with a green jalapeno, and those green jalapenos will eventually ripen, which is when they're picked in Mexico and then they're smoked and dried. That is a proper Chipotle pepper. Now, the jalapenos I have growing right now are all green, so I'm gonna pick a bunch of those. Then to add some of the fruitiness that I'd be missing from the ripening process, I'm gonna add a few of these bad boys, the habaneras. These have all of the fruity flavor of a habanero with just less spice. I'm also gonna be picking some Roma tomatoes and cherry tomatoes, which will increase that umami-ness and also add a nice red coloring to this spice mix. And I removed the stems of the peppers and I sliced the tomatoes in half because these babies are going on the smoker. And I smoked them at a low temperature for just 6 hours, so I wanted as much of that flavor to penetrate as possible. So when they came off the smoker, I additionally added some onion and some garlic that I had stored in the basement from earlier this season. And then I dehydrated all of these veggies and aromatics for 2 days at 130 degrees until they were very dry. I also picked a bunch of oregano from my garden, tied that up, and dehydrated that as well, which is a very classic herb in these Mexican spice mixes and marinades. And I decided to remove all the seeds from the peppers because these homegrown chilies are extremely powerful. And if I need more spicy, I can always add seeds back as needed. And the dried goods get added to a spice grinder along with some of that oregano, some coriander seeds, some cumin seeds, and some salt. So here's my dry rub, and here is the wet marinade. And just so you know, these two things are basically the exact same ingredients, just in different forms. Now in this Chipotle advertisement, you can see they're using chicken thigh, but the chicken I sampled was definitely breast. And I'm gonna do 2 breasts coated in that smoky spice rub. I also added a little bit of lime juice, which I accidentally didn't film. This will help tenderize the chicken, plus the other marinade has it as well. And the second 2 pieces, of course, get that Chipotle and adobo marinade. And after about 14 hours in the fridge, this chicken was ready to hit the wood fire.
I feel like we have to taste at least the chicken before the whole thing comes together.
Yeah.
The smell is
insane.
This is garden spice mix. This is Chipotle adobo sauce.
I think we should start with the Chipotle adobo because I'm more excited about the dry.
Yeah. That's solid.
Solid. I thought it was going to be really spicy.
No.
But it's not. It kind of tastes like Chipotle chicken.
Yeah, it's got a nice, even, smoky spice.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the main vibe you're getting there.
Yeah.
There's not too much more, but it's really good.
It's really good.
I would be very happy with that as just a base chicken.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little like one-noted.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Just kind of smoky, spicy. Here we go.
Yeah. This I'm excited for.
Whoa.
Wow.
The complexity is like a lot more is going on there. It keeps going too because the spice is more intense.
Wow. That is so many layers of flavor.
That's the biggest difference.
This is smoky, spicy, sweet. I mean, the smoky from the grill, but the smoke from the peppers that you did. I think this is like spot on. I much prefer that.
Takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, it takes a lot of effort. But now we have, a jar of it you can use over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's not like a one time.
We might have just created created like the greatest just smoky barbecue spice ever.
It also really does taste like the Chipotle chicken.
That.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was saying you could put that on anything. Fish, meat, veggies.
Also, in terms of the overnight marinade, I kind of expected this to have more flavor, but it's this one that really like all the way through the chicken.
So most recipes are the marinade, but because you're doing just a spice rub, you're getting much more flavor. So it's almost 100%. A little bit unfair, but it's a good point that like, even though that looks heavily spiced, it's not going to even compete with this.
That's amazing.
All right, let's get into some of these salsas. Again, I'm picking what crosses over the most with my garden right now, and also my favorite salsas from Chipotle. And we're gonna start off with by far my favorite, which is the salsa verde. So I'm gonna take a little trip to the garden with my air fryer basket since everything is getting roasted. And I'll start off with some of these longer green peppers. And unfortunately, I didn't grow tomatillos this year, but I do have a ton of tomatoes. And a great little hack for a tomatillo replacement is picking tomatoes right when they start to ripen. This way they still have a little bit of sweetness, but they're a little firmer and you get that green color. I'm using these smaller plum tomatoes, which certainly look like a lot of tomatillos I've either bought or grown. And I added in just one jalapeno, which you can see right here, which will increase the spice level. And finally, I'll add some red onion from the garden, and I sprayed these with some oil, pop them in the air fryer on the broil setting for about 7 to 8 minutes until they look like this. And the Chipotle salsa verde is nice and chunky, so I'm gonna use my food processor over the blender, and I'll just add some additional fresh garlic, some cilantro, which unfortunately we failed to grow this year. We struggled with most herbs due to the intense heat this summer. And of course, these salsas need some lime juice, which I'm not growing here on the Northeast. So I'll season it up and I will pulse everything up until I get a nice chunky salsa verde. Now for salsa 2 and sort of salsa 3, I'm gonna make the pico. But what I realized is the pico de gallo and the corn salsa Chipotle have the exact same ingredients, except one has a base of corn and one has a base of tomatoes. Everything else in there seems to be identical. So since I have all of these ingredients in my garden, I thought, why not save some time and combine the two into one salsa? This year was the first time we experimented in the garden with the ancient Mexican growing technique of the 3 sisters, which is basically just growing corn, beans, and squash as companion plants, and it has been straight abundance. I'll be doing this every single year. So I'm gonna pick some of this corn. I thought Roma tomatoes would be good due to their lack of juice, which certainly is not present in Chipotle pico. And you can see here their pico de gallo also has a lot of peppers, which I believe are jalapenos, but it's not that spicy. And I think the reason for that is standard jalapenos that you would get from the store can be very mild. So I grabbed some jalapenos, which are very spicy in my garden, and then some mild green peppers just to increase that pepper ratio and bulk things up a bit. And then all I needed was some red onion and garlic from the basement. So these are my garden ingredients for the salsa, and the only other additions I need are cilantro and lime. I chopped up the onion, Roma tomatoes, green peppers, jalapenos, cilantro, and garlic, and added them to a bowl, and then I shucked my corn. This pollination is terrible.
That is awful.
And when everything was in the bowl, I seasoned this with lime juice, a little bit of salt, and since the Chipotle pico was very sweet, I did just add a little bit of sugar to enhance the natural sweetness of the tomatoes and the corn. Let's talk about Chipotle rice, which is cilantro rice, and it might just be my favorite element of the Chipotle menu. All you have to do is take some long grain rice. I'm using 1 cup of white jasmine rice. Give it a few rinses until the liquid runs clear, and I'm gonna be using my rice cooker, which I know will cook it to perfection, but of course you can cook it in a pot. And once the rice is cooked, I'll dump it into a bowl. I'll chop up a bunch of cilantro, toss that in. Then I'm spraying the rice with some avocado oil to evenly distribute the oil. And then I'll hit it with the juice of 1 lime and toss everything together. Trust me, if you're making Chipotle at home, don't serve plain white rice. I think this cilantro rice is a big part of that just iconic flavor of a classic Chipotle burrito. And for the beans, unfortunately, it's early for dried beans in the garden, but you can see they are pumping in this 3 Sisters patch. But I did grab some dried black beans about a month ago when I took a little trip out east on Long Island. Shout out Amber Waves. I'll soak these beans overnight and really Usually Chipotle black beans are pretty simple. There's no need to cook down any aromatics. I'm just gonna dump all of my soaked beans into a pot, and I'm simply adding these 3 aromatics from my garden: red onion, garlic, and bay leaf. I'll cook these on a nice gentle low heat for about 2 hours, with the goal of having that perfect tenderness where you can smush the bean in between your fingers, but the beans completely hold their shape and aren't cracked. Then I'll season everything with salt after, which I find helps the beans from breaking early during the cooking process. Now, you didn't think I'd be making all of these elements completely from scratch and then go buy some store-bought tortillas, right? If you did, you have not watched this channel long enough. So for these flour tortillas, I'm using a very trustworthy recipe from King Arthur. I've linked this below, and I'm weighing everything out. So I'm gonna start with the flour. I'll add in some fat. I'm using some homemade rendered beef fat, then a little bit of baking powder to help with that puff, and some salt. And then you work that fat into the flour just like a pie crust. Then you add your hot water to create the dough, and then over the course of an hour, I just really fold this dough, let it rest, fold the dough until it is perfectly smooth. And you can make tortillas right away. I do like to let this dough rest overnight. And the next day I portioned out the dough, and as most of you know, Chipotle tortillas are oversized tortillas. They come in at 12 inches in diameter compared to a typical store-bought tortilla at around 10 inches. They also steam press them, which gives them an almost stretchability in order to pack in all of those ingredients. So it took me a few different weight tests to actually get the proper ratio of that thickness for a 12-inch tortilla. And for anyone wondering, the weight that worked for me was 115 grams per tortilla. And my largest pan in the house was 11 inches in diameter, so I needed a plan B.
Come on. Should bubble pretty quickly. Wow, it's already bubbling. Whoa. Like a pizza, we gotta just keep rotating it. Oh my God, talk about air. What do you think? That's good. Rice, beans, chop up the chicken, salsa verde, pico, sour cream. So just glue it all together. Let's see if I can wrap this thing. Come on. I mean, that's
2 Chipotle burritos in my opinion.
insane. I did not expect that they would look so similar.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away.
Ours just
like
looks
you wouldn't
better.
even be able to really, at first glance, they look very similar. This is more appetizing. It's like, I like that as a package size that looks ready to just munch on. This is a little bit, and they go aggressive with it.
Yeah.
But I think a normal burrito is probably more.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because the Chipotle burritos are so size inconsistent that this could just be a very small burrito. Look at the tortilla.
That's true. Tortilla. Okay. You get half.
Nice.
Do we need to try this again?
I think
maybe after. Let's not spoil this experience.
Yeah, the tortilla has like good stretch to it.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. It's so good.
No words. I think like after eating this one and eating each component separately, I never put together how salty Chipotle is.
So salty.
So salty.
Same thing that happened with McDonald's. It's like that is an immediate reaction of when you're trying them back and forth.
Yeah.
It's much more subtle, the flavors. The salt and the sugar are toned down.
Yeah.
So instead of it all blending together,
you can taste each thing separately. The rice tastes fresh instead of salty. The chicken tastes fresh instead of salty.
You can really taste the beans.
Yeah. You can really taste the rice.
Yes.
Which I feel like in here, in the Chipotle one, the rice is like extremely neutral. It's just the base.
This is a burrito that I would eat a lot. That's what a burrito I feel like should be.
Yeah.
I will say, this process was much different than McDonald's because right off the bat, Chipotle is making things from scratch.
Yeah.
So it is much harder to replicate the exact flavors, the exact sizing of everything because there's people actually making the food, which good for Chipotle. They've been able to turn actual cooking into fast food. Versus McDonald's is their whole business is built on perfect consistency.
Yeah, down to like the genetic scientific level, perfect consistency.
So this recreation was a bit different. I feel like we had more ability to kind of do what we wanted in some ways.
Yeah.
That's it. Comment in below what you want to see next. Yeah, there's more out there. The garden is still popping.
Yeah.
So let us know. And we will be continuing to eat our burritos.